Okay, so we've gone through most of the packet. There's a few problems at the end that are left. Namely 16, 17, and 19. So we're just going to talk about like how those work. Um, Also, I decided what we're doing next Thursday while you were working on this. We're gonna have a fun thing, which I am tentatively calling Tour de Graphs, which is funny because it's also a tour. Um, so the idea is you're gonna get into groups and then go walk around campus and look for graphs. Um, and write your answers on a sheet of paper and then turn it into me by the end of class time. And then it'll count towards an exam grade. Hopefully it doesn't rain that day, fingers crossed. And then with that, since you're walking around, let me know if you have any concerns, like if your foot hurts or something like that. Um, so that's the plan. On Tuesday, we'll probably look at a little bit of coding. Um, and then we'll get into that more in earnest after we come back from spring break. Okay, let's pull this up. And I will connect my tablet. So the book has some case studies for digraphs of here's like interesting applications for them. One of which is in ecology. And so this includes a sort of graph like this, where this is a forest in Canada. And there's all these different species, mostly of willows, types of trees. And then like beetles, spiders, frogs, flies, snails, etc. And so the idea being that the like if species there's an edge from species 1 to species 2, then 1 eats 2. So like frogs eat snails or a snake eats a frog. So that's the idea for this big graph. And so that's the same kind of graph that's given to you in problem number 16. Um, Wait, let me pull that up. Too far. Yeah, so this is it gives you a directed graph. And so your job is to come up with a competition graph. And a competition graph is we've got this directed thing, and now we want to know like which predators share prey. So how does this ecosystem kind of depend on each other? Uh, and so the way we get that is, so this is a competition graph for the one above. And so two predators being adjacent means that, so predator 1 being adjacent to predator 2 means that they share some prey. Let me open my notes, make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, so the idea here, so let's look at the leaf beetle, the sawfly, and the flea beetle. So let's look at leaf beetle and sawfly first. So sawfly is here, leaf beetle is here. So the leaf beetle is a predator with nothing that is, so it's a predator but not prey because there's only outgoing edges. So nothing eats the leaf beetle, at least not in this graph. But the sawfly is eaten by a grackle, which I think is a bird. and by a frog and by a spider. So it is both predator and prey. But anyway, so the leaf beetle and the sawfly both prey on the same thing, being the meadow willow. So that means that they're adjacent in this graph. And so for the leaf beetle and the flea beetle, they both eat the pussy willow tree. So that's why they're adjacent. And then the sawfly and the flea beetle, let's see, flea beetle and sawfly, they also both eat the meadow willow. So like we could label those if we wanted, just to make it clear to us. But the idea is that they share the same prey. And so this is the competition graph. And so then, so the beetles and the sawfly, those are all kind of in their own component. And then the birds, the spider and frog are over here in their own component. And I'm probably that they all share, like, probably prey on the beetles. And then the trees, the snake and the snail are kind of off by themselves. So the trees just get, because they're just prey, and so they're by them, they're lonesome. And then the snake and so the snake doesn't share prey with anyone, so that's why it's off by itself. And the snail is also only prey, so that's why it's off by itself. Okay, so take a minute and work on 16 now with your group. Unless you're already done. When it comes up. Give you one more minute. Okay, anyone need more time for that one? Or are we good? Cool. Let's see if we can do this one in the next 5 minutes. The next one is uh it's kind of hard to say things about it. It's a bit difficult, so that's my goal, is for us to just be able to talk about it. But there's a notion of signed graphs. where let's say we've got a social network. So we've got Jim and Mia and Jill and Jack. And so we can have directed edges, meaning that like person one knows person two, or maybe is friends with person two or likes person two. And then, but not necessarily the other way around. Because like you can be friends with someone and maybe they're not, like you can know someone, but they don't know you. So let's see the one that the book has. So this is the one the book has. And you can also add signs to it, like positive or negative signs to indicate maybe Mia has a positive relationship with Jill, but Jill does not have a positive relationship with Mia. And we can do that going through the graph. So I think that's the only negative one in this graph. Let's make this negative just for fun. Let's say Jim does not like Jill. So we can go through the graph and we can say that Mia has a positive relationship with Jim, who doesn't have a positive relationship with Jill, and so on. Yeah, and so there's a graph over here in the book that says something about energy and different impacts that it can have on the society, like the capacity for energy, the number of factories, the number of jobs that there are, how big the population is, and so on. And so we can use these digraphs to have some information, and positive or negative to denote like maybe an increase in the amount of energy used means that the quality of environment goes down, which kind of makes sense. So the one thing that I'm gonna add is there's an idea of the positive feedback cycle, right, where we can find a cycle in this graph, and then a negative. And the definition that they give is it's both are defined in terms of how many negative edges there are. So a negative has an odd number of negative edges, and this one is even number of edges, negative edges. So that's something that we can just like look at the graph and see. But let's take the last 1 minute and stare at the problem 17 or whatever it is, and maybe talk about the graph. What can you say about it? I'm not necessarily looking for the actual answer. Maybe just look at the cycles and see what does one say about the other, say about the other. All right, it's 11:20. So we'll finish this up next time. It's not nearly going to take the whole class. So we'll probably look at coding a bit. But first we'll look at rock, paper, scissors and tournaments. Thanks for coming. See you next time. Good luck with midterms.